and thank you for joining today's NeedyMed special topic webinar, Liver Wellness Program, presented by the American Liver Foundation. My name is Carla. I am the Director of Education at NeedyMeds, and before we get started with today's presentation, I want to go over just a few tips. Throughout the webinar, you can feel free to type any questions you may have into the question section of your GoToWebinar control panel, which is on your desktop. And I would suggest keeping that panel on your desktop. If it's in your way, you can drag it with your mouse to the corner of your screen. Although we encourage you to ask questions, please know that we will reserve answering them until the end of the webinar. If we don't have time to get to your particular question, we will follow up with you personally via email after the webinar within about a day. But of course, contact information for both NeedyMeds and the American Liver Foundation will be provided. I also want you to know that this webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing on the NeedyMeds YouTube channel soon. It usually takes us a few days to get it up on that channel. Also, with today's presentation, you should see two handouts in your GoToWebinar control panel, which is my brief introduction and outro, and then also the PowerPoint presentation from the American Liver Foundation. If you have trouble downloading it or would like me to email you a copy when the webinar is over, certainly send me a message again in that question section or contact me after the webinar. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. For those of you that are not familiar with NeedyMeds, on your screen now is our mission statement and a statement about how we achieve that mission. And as you can see, NeedyMeds is a national nonprofit dedicated to both educating and empowering those seeking affordable health care. And we define the education portion of our mission in two ways. One, by educating people about NeedyMeds and the resources we have to offer. And two, by letting them know about other resources and healthcare topics, which is why we are so pleased to welcome today's guests from the American Liver Foundation. And while I do that introduction, I'm just going to go ahead and throw up a screenshot of the NeedyMeds homepage. I always like to put that up there because really our website is the face of our organization. So let's turn back to our guests. The American Liver Foundation's mission is to facilitate, advocate, and promote education, support, and research for the prevention, treatment, and cure of liver disease. And one of the ways they achieve this mission is by offering a general liver education program for adults seeking to understand how the liver functions and the causes and risk factors and treatments for the most prevalent liver diseases. The program is offered to adult community groups, including civic organizations, hospitals, and other community settings, and can also certainly be a part of the corporate wellness program. Today, Paul Bolta, the American Liver Foundation's Community Outreach and Education Manager for the Greater New York Division, and Cynthia Banya, the National Manager of Support Services of the American Liver Foundation, will be walking us through today's presentation and the Liver Wellness Program. Paul is a certified alcohol and drug counselor, originally from Boston, with 20 years of experience in the HIV, hepatitis C, and viral hepatitis field. Paul is dedicated to educating everyone on the facts of viral hepatitis, disease prevention, and access to care. Cynthia oversees the American Liver Foundation's National Helpline, which fielded nearly 12,000 inquiries last year. Cynthia also manages all of the educational materials the American Liver Foundation creates and assists with resource information for those with liver disease. So without further ado, I'm going to pass both the mic and the screen to our guests. So bear with us while we do that. That may just take a moment. And Paul and Cynthia, when you're ready, go ahead and take it away. Enjoy today's presentation, everyone.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on liver wellness. My name is Paul, and I'm here with Cynthia, as was just announced. So we're going to get moving right into things. And, you know, this program is for everybody. you know, like it says, what everybody needs to know. Liver disease has no boundaries, no, how do you say, doesn't discriminate. Everybody is impacted or affected by liver disease. It's not just men, it's not just women, it's not just people that are maybe alcoholics or any of the traditional things that we may hear a lot in mainstream about liver wellness or liver disease. So this is really a great program also for anybody that may have already lived or has been cured of any liver disease, because after we get back to a healthy liver, we want to maintain its healthiness, and we want to try to follow any types of suggestions, feedback to keep our liver healthy and strong. You know, our liver is the only organ that can rejuvenate itself, so it's really important that we take care of it in a lot of different ways. And we're going to get started right away. So the liver, well, first of all, the impact of liver disease is really great. There's over 30 million Americans that have liver diseases, and they're on the rise all the time, especially with viral hepatitis, including hepatitis A, B, and C. Hep C especially. We see commercials that are targeted towards baby boomers, people born between 1945 and 1965, but we're also seeing a large amount of younger people between the ages of 18 and 29 that are now making up the new infections of hepatitis C, and we'll get into the reason why a little later. Fatty liver disease is really a problem that's been around for many, many years, but with the advancements of treatments and labs and other things that doctors are learning about, we're able to figure out what some of the causes are. And then there's non-alcohol fatty liver disease, NAFLD. NAFLD is basically the fat accumulation of the liver, which left untreated could cause NASH or other advanced liver diseases, and it might be a little too late to try to slow them down or reverse it. And then that could lead to cirrhosis. There's many types of cirrhosis. It's not just about alcohol. It could be from medications, environment. A lot of different things can cause cirrhosis. And then there's hepatocellular carcinoma, which is a type of liver cancer that is starting to make itself a little better acquainted now, mostly with people that are of maybe middle age and up. We don't see it a lot in younger folks. So the liver is, like I said, it's a really important organ. It's the second largest organ in our body. It does over 500 different functions. So I like to refer to the liver as our body's power plant. Everything that we put into our body has to get processed through our liver. So whether it's food, drinks, medications, if I'm using a pain patch, Nicoderm patch, any of those BioFreeze, those or Bengay, anything that might absorb into muscles and tissue, all gets filtered through our liver. Cigarette smoke, secondhand smoke, pollution, it all gets processed through our liver, and if our liver is doing its job, most of those things can be filtered out and the toxins can be removed, and then the nutrients from our food have a better chance of being absorbed and distributed more appropriately. And so by doing these things, it helps produce muscles. A lot of people say, well, I don't really have any muscles because I don't work out. You don't have to work out to have muscles. We all have muscles. Some are just a little bit more noticeable than others. It helps make bile to digest food. There's good bile and bad bile. The bad bile causes a bile duct disease, which blocks the bile ducts from the filtration process. And the good bile helps break down that breakfast, lunch, and dinner that we had to make sure that we're getting the benefits and the nutrients from those meals. Helps start cuts from bleeding, like helps clot. It kills germs and detoxifies substances that are harmful to the body. I often ask people to think about what would be something that we have to detoxify from. And usually people take a second and they think about it, and then the first thing they say is usually alcohol. Yeah, alcohol is something that's harmful, that, you know, but within moderation, you know, the detoxifying of the liver isn't as difficult as if we were consuming a lot of alcohol. So lots of alcohol make it really harmful to the liver and the body. But I mentioned secondhand smoke, cigarette smoke, often, like I said, household cleaners. So if somebody is cleaning their home and they don't have a window open or there's no fan or no ventilation, breathing in all those cleaning fluids like bleach or ammonia or anything else like that that can cause some harm, and also headaches and stuff like that. Pesticides, if we're using like bug killer, or if we're gardening and we're using anything to keep the bugs away, that could be harmful, as well as spray paint, any type of heavy-duty chemicals that have warnings on how to use them, but sometimes we overlook the warnings and we may get a little too close, and it could give us a headache, or it could give us, other issues. So looking at this picture of the liver, it's located on our right-hand side underneath the rib cage with a little bit of it exposed. So imagine if you're at the doctor's office and you're laying back and he or she is doing stomach compressions, abdominal compressions, and then tapping their hand. What they're doing is to look to see if any of that exposed liver is inflamed, and also if there's anything in that area that might cause some inflammation to the liver as well. So if we were sitting up straight and we put our hands underneath our ribs, we really can't feel the liver, we just feel muscle. So a lot of people start jabbing their sides when they realize the liver is exposed, but you're just feeling muscle. So you're really not going to be able to do it. A doctor knows how to do that, or a nurse, so they know what they're looking for. It weighs about 3.5 pounds, and it's about the size of a football, but it's not big and round like a football. It's fairly flat, almost like a chicken cutlet. It has that flimsy, flexible feeling with this spongy-like consistency, so if you squeeze it, it kind of goes back to its shape. And it just kind of lays there under the rib cage, like I said, on a slight angle. So a sonogram might be used to see if you have gallstones or anything, because your gallbladder is right there as well. And if you have gallstones, they can move into your bile ducts, and that could create a lot of problems, and it can also really increase your liver function test to an unhealthy place. So your liver, is, like I said, is partially protected, and there is a little exposed for exam and stuff like that, but it's an amazing organ, and no matter who we are or what we do or how we eat, whatever our diet is, we have to remember that everything that gets put into our body has to get processed through our liver. So here you see some images. So the upper left-hand side is a healthy liver. It's fairly pink or mauve, depending on your eye for color, and it's smooth. So if something was to be written about this, it would say this liver is unremarkable. The term unremarkable is often used as a clinical term, although it's not very scientific, but there's nothing to say about it. So if this was my liver, it would say Paul's liver is unremarkable. If there was something wrong with this image, it would say Paul's liver is, then whatever's wrong. So if we would just touch that liver, which we typically wouldn't, but blood would just filter out like a wet sponge with water. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. It just filters the blood, and there's constantly blood coming in and out. So our liver filters the blood, and our heart pumps the blood. So the heart and the liver, although they might be in two different locations, they work very well together. One's the pump and one's the filter. So if our filter is working great, we can continue to live healthy and have a good strong liver. But then if, say, we go to the doctor 6 months after the last time we were there, and we may have increased in our weight. Our weight may have gone up 15 pounds. Or our cholesterol is really, really high after some labs, and our high triglycerides and diabetic levels, and all of these elevated liver function tests could create some concerns. So some questions might be asked. So the last time we saw you, Paul, you weighed this, and now you're about 15 pounds heavier. Can you tell us about what's going on in your life? And if I don't really have anything to report, hopefully they'll ask me another question, like, do you still go to the gym? Do you still walk to work? Are you still taking the kids out? And if I say I'm not doing anything or any of those things, I'm telling him that I'm not very mobile, I'm not very active. So that's a cue. And then when he looks at my labs and he sees the cholesterol and everything, then there's a second set of questions hopefully will be asked about, what's my diet like? Why have I increased in the weight? Am I trying to increase my weight, or is something else going on? And my answer could be, no, I don't know what's going on. So he'll say, well, what are you eating? And I might give him the menu that I've had so far today. It's only about 1:30, and I could have had 3 meals by now. And depending on where those meals came from, they could be high in cholesterol, saturated fat, lots of sugars, juices, soda, anything like that. It has a lot of high triglycerides. That's all going to be, it's going to impact my weight. It's going to affect all my labs and my cholesterol. So here we have, I've been very inactive, and now I'm gaining weight and my cholesterol is high. So my labs are a little, confused. So they may say, okay, this may seem like you're starting to get fatty liver disease, but what they can do is what they've done for us here in this picture is they've shaved off a piece of the liver so that we can see inside. And if you see all that white marbling and all the spots, what that is scarring, also known as fibrosis, which is blocking the filtration system. So the upper left-hand corner of that liver is a filter. It's functioning well. It's got great color. And now down here in the second image, it's changed its color a little bit, and there's a lot more scarring, which means the meds and the nutrients aren't filtering to the liver properly. So cholesterol, fat, all that is building up in my liver. So if I'm on medication, the medication may not get absorbed or filtered efficiently, so that I don't get the full benefit of the meal or the medicine. So that could be a concern. So I say, okay, if this is what's going on me, what do I do about it? So the doctor could give a medication, but rather than just use medication, they might just give me a little responsibility. They may say, maybe if you try to, go out for a walk now and then, or maybe get off the bus one stop before your house, maybe take a dog out for a walk, find something to do to get your heart rate go up and just be active. And then maybe if I can just cut down a little bit on what I'm eating, don't necessarily go on a diet because we don't want to set anybody up for failure, but maybe make some suggestions on how to modify what I'm eating. And if I'm like, I can probably handle that. I don't have to join a gym. I don't have to eat organic if I can't do those things. So I can go for a walk and I can cut down my fast food. And if I lose a good amount of that weight that I've gained, my liver goes right back up to the upper left where it's a healthy liver. So because the liver can rejuvenate itself, once I've got rid of some of the scarring and got my liver and my cholesterol in check, I can go back to a healthy liver. That's great. So, but my life may be back and forth. I may struggle with my weight and cholesterol throughout my life, but if I can try to find a balance where if I do have some weight, extra weight, that I try to maintain that and just try to be careful of what I'm eating so that I don't elevate my cholesterol and that I don't have my liver enzymes, get a little out of control. So that's great. So if I don't know this is what's going on, if I don't know I have bad cholesterol, and I don't know I have fatty liver, and I don't know any of these things, eventually I could develop cirrhosis. In the upper right-hand corner, this is a liver that is, extremely scarred with really out of control cirrhosis. So this is not alcohol cirrhosis. Alcohol cirrhosis, the liver looks completely different. It's got totally different shape and color. So this cirrhosis is obviously the liver is breaking away from itself. If you look to the left, it's one whole organ. And then if you look to this image on the right, you can see the splitting and the spacing in between. So in all those bumps, those nodules are preventing the filtration system from working. So if this is my liver and I'm taking medicine, more likely than not, the medicine is not working because it's not being able to be absorbed. There's no blood filtering my liver, and it could mean, a lot of greater consequences that I might not be prepared for. If I start to develop cirrhosis and they catch it early on and it's not as advanced, hopefully they can reverse it with some aggressive treatment and then try to make sure that I don't have an outbreak of cirrhosis or it doesn't, reemerge in a state that there's no coming back from. So we can go from a healthy liver to a liver with some scarring, fibrosis, to cirrhosis. Now, this isn't a normal wave. People don't start off here and end up there. Many people that have a healthy liver, when they find out something's going on, if they find out in time and they're able to, meet it head on, they can reverse some of the damage. And that's what's so great about our liver. It's the only organ that can rejuvenate itself. Now, there's no rejuvenation coming back from this type of cirrhosis, but this patient may have been eligible for a liver transplant or a partial transplant, which could have prevented, an unwelcome consequence. So there are many causes of liver disease. You know, viruses, genetics is mother to child transmission, not what's in our genes, autoimmune disease, excessive alcohol, poor diet or obesity, reactions to medications or chemicals. So hepatitis is a Greek word. Hepa, Greek for liver, itis means inflammation. So whenever you see anything with the word itis, arthritis, phlebitis, meningitis, hepatitis, it means there's inflammation. The first half of the word will tell you where. Hepa, the liver, inflamed. So keep that in mind if you ever hear anything about, there's inflammation. So like we said, autoimmune disease, viruses, alcohol and toxins, non-alcohol fatty liver disease. There are many different reasons that can create hepatitis, and sometimes we don't know that we have it because our liver doesn't have any nerve endings, so it doesn't emanate any pain. Hepatitis A, B, and C are the most common forms of hepatitis in this country. So there are differences between the three, hepatitis A, B, and C. This slide is really involved, so I'll break it down. It says, so hepatitis A is spread through food or water that's been contaminated by fecal matter. So if somebody is preparing you a sandwich and if they've used the bathroom and didn't wash their hands, if shellfish has been contaminated from, certain banks in the sea, in the area where the fishes come, there might be a high concentration of bacterial and stuff like that. And it's really easy to get, but also mimics food poisoning. So sometimes, do I have hepatitis A or do I have food poisoning? But if you're vaccinated, chances are you're not going to get Hep A. You'll probably, if you get sick or have any of these symptoms, it might be food poisoning. So there is a vaccine for hepatitis A, but if you aren't vaccinated and you come in contact with hepatitis A, you will probably have it for about 3 to 6 weeks. It kind of hits you hard and heavy at first. The person may have a lot of diarrhea, dehydration, jaundice, yellowing of the skin or eyes, chronic fatigue, diarrhea, or greasy tar-like stool. And basically, all the naps that this person would take because they're so tired aren't what we call restful naps. It's just chronic fatigue. So after a nap, you still wake up and you're a little tired. So you have to be careful. You don't want to have sexual relations during this time. You don't want to be preparing food for anybody. You just want to kind of take it easy, stay hydrated, and get through it. And it's not a very long-lasting illness. Hepatitis B is a little different. It's found in blood and body fluids such as semen, vaginal fluid, and saliva. And most people that, I don't want to say most, but a lot of people that get hepatitis B, if left untreated, can create a chronic infection, which means the more you have it, the more damages it does. So if I've had hepatitis B for a long time, but I'm getting treatment for it, then the likelihood of having advanced liver disease damage is lessened because I'm being treated. But if I'm not being treated, then of course the virus is going to do more damage to my liver. Fortunately, there is a vaccine for hepatitis A and B. And a lot of people refer to them as the shots or this and that. So if somebody is talking about different types of precautionary measures between sex or anything, and this is a great question. Have you been vaccinated for hepatitis A or B? And they're a safe vaccine, so if you don't remember and then you go to get it again, the drug won't hurt you in any way. They always just they'll do a test to see if you have any of it in your system already, and then they'll give you one vaccine. But if it comes back that you're good, you don't need it, you just don't have to go back for the rest of the vaccines. So if somebody is pregnant, this can be kind of risky. So, but what happens now is that babies, when they're born to hepatitis B infected moms or undiagnosed, they're all given vaccines at birth and they're tested as well. So if I was born in another country and I had my children here and maybe in my homeland there weren't any vaccines, at least that when I had my child here, those vaccines would be available to my child and hopefully they would be offered to me as well. If you're not sure about something like that, you can always ask your doctor or nurse or somebody that is like a health advocate for you, and you could get some information. Hepatitis C is completely different than the first two. This is direct blood-to-blood contact. So if I eat a hamburger, I'm not going to get hepatitis C. If I kiss somebody, I'm not going to get hepatitis C. So it has to be two pools of blood that come together. So that means the blood where there is an actual infection, a viral load consisting of hep C, and another pool of blood. And there's many different ways these pools of blood can come together. Blood transfusions, dialysis, surgical products, blood products. Before the early 90s, there was a lot of stuff that was infected or wasn't up to standard, but things have changed and advanced so much now that if someone donates blood or receives a blood product, it's been tested for everything and is pretty safe to use. If I have a history of intravenous drug use and where I'm sharing needles either with somebody else or whatever, or the equipment that goes along with that, and if there's infected blood that comes in contact with that needle, then one time is enough for me to get the virus. I don't have to shoot drugs for years and years for it to develop. The first time I inject with something that has been infected with the virus is enough. Hepatitis C is 10 to 15 times more infectious than HIV. So if you think about how infectious HIV is, magnify that by 10 or 15 times, and you'll understand how infectious hepatitis C is. So if another point I might want to do to prevent hep C is maybe don't use anybody's razor, don't use anybody's toothbrush. If I go get my nails done, maybe bring my own equipment with me, because if some of that nail salon equipment or anything has been used on somebody and maybe they were cut and there was some blood on it, that blood could potentially have the virus and it could be transferred to the next person that uses it. Same thing with tattoos. If I want to get a tattoo, they're very popular now, I want to make sure that I'm going to a reputable place where, you know, I'm able to maybe observe, and I'll watch the tattoo artist prepare the station. I'll watch how they open products. Are they opening them before the person sits down or as they sit down? Are they reusing cups of ink? We don't want any materials to be shared, whether it's toothbrush, razors, needles, whatever it is, because that will prevent any risk of infection. If the place doesn't look clean enough to you, or if you're not comfortable, then just don't do it. Wait until you're comfortable, ask all the questions you want, and just try to make sure that you're someplace that is of a standard that's suitable for you. So let me move on. So a lot of folks that, if they've immigrated from Africa, Asia, or Eastern European and other areas, should definitely be tested for hepatitis B. Or even if their family member or partner has hepatitis B, sometimes we don't know because it hasn't been tested. If somebody has a history of multiple sex partners, you don't know what people's behaviors are like, so it's probably a good idea to always make sure you're vaccinated if you are sexually active. If I'm a healthcare worker, first responder, anybody that could deal with children where there might be any of these body fluids around, I definitely want to make sure that I'm vaccinated and tested. Hepatitis C, like I said earlier, if it was a blood transfusion prior to '92, if I was a baby boomer between 1945 and 1964, needles to inject drugs or straws to snort cocaine or heroin or whatever it is, long-term hemodialysis, abnormal liver enzymes. These are some indicators that I might fall into a risk category. Doesn't mean I've done anything to necessarily put myself at risk, but these are some of the things that people look for when they consider testing. If I'm a healthcare worker, I want to make sure I'm not stuck by a sharp or anything. So if I'm a phlebotomist and I'm drawing blood, I want to make sure that I cap everything appropriately before I throw it away in the sharps container. Make sure I don't pick up anything out of a trash bag that may have a sharp container in the clinic. Just be really careful. If the person is really like afraid of needles and they're waving their arms around, I might ask for some support to work with the patient so that they calm down, so that it's a safe interaction for both the patient and for myself. I don't want to get stuck with a needle. I might want to think about, if I'm having unprotected sex with multiple partners, I want to be careful of any STDs. If I'm at risk for multiple STDs, I could be at risk for many other things. So I might want to make sure that I'm practicing safe sex, and not just one-sided. It's a joint effort, so both of us, or the folks that are having sex, should be mutually protected. Tattoos and piercings, like I mentioned, and exposure to nail clippers and razors. That's a lot of information. So I'm going to move on to non-alcohol fatty liver disease, which we're starting to see a lot more of now. If you Google it, you'll see tons and tons of reports on it around the world, especially in the United States. So it's categorized by fat accumulation on the liver that can be mild or severe. So imagine, like I mentioned earlier, about the filtration system. If I'm taking my morning medicine and then I take my afternoon medicine, that's great. But by the time I take my afternoon, my morning meds haven't completely absorbed. So then I'm going to take my evening med. So what's happening is I'm having a pileup. So by the time I take my evening med, my afternoon med may just be absorbing. And that's because the fat is blocking the filtration system. So that means whether I take my medicine with food or lots of fluids, it doesn't matter. It's about the absorption rate. So if the meds aren't absorbing effectively, I'm not going to get the benefit of the medication. So if it's a 30-day prescription, at the end of 30 days, it might look like I'm not taking it properly in my labs, or I might have to go on it for 2 extra weeks. So there's a lot of things that can come up. So if I know I'm have fatty liver, or if I'm at risk for it, I want to make sure that whatever medicine I take, I get the full benefit from. This doesn't have to happen to anybody who drinks. You can drink a little. You can drink no alcohol. That's why it's called non-alcohol fatty liver disease. The risk factors could be being overweight or obese, and being overweight means different things for different people. So there's this textbook rating of what someone's weight should be, and if you're this, you're overweight, and then you're obese. A lot of that, you have to like figure it out. Where do you fit in? How does it apply to you? And work with your physician or whoever is your support and say, am I really overweight? Am I really obese? Work that out with a professional. Don't let anybody basically tell you, oh, I think you're overweight because you're 5 pounds above. So just that varies for everybody. Certain metabolic conditions, diabetes, high blood pressure, I mentioned this earlier. If these are some of the things that are a little elevated or a little concerned, then we should definitely think about what's going on with our diet and exercise. And because the liver doesn't have any nerve endings, it doesn't emanate any pain. So if the person has NAFLD or any types of fatty liver disease, they're not going to necessarily physically feel it. Like you can't put your hand on your side and say, ouch, my liver hurts, like you might your kidney or your chest. So, but you may see other symptoms, but it might take many, many years. So NAFLD affects approximately up to 30% of Americans, including school-age children. And think about childhood obesity. Think about the access to sodas, sugary drinks. School cafeterias may not have the healthiest options, and especially kids with allergies, what might be available might not be the best thing for them. So how do we treat NAFLD? Well, excuse me, we mentioned earlier about weight loss and diet. A healthy diet to me is going to be something that's different than to everybody else. So I like to say, well, I'm going to enjoy pizza and I'm going to enjoy ice cream, but maybe I don't do it every day. Maybe mix it up a few times a week. Maybe eat less pizza than a whole pizza, and maybe 1 ice cream scoop instead of a half a gallon. I love them both, and I can overindulge, but I have to be mindful that it's going to increase my cholesterol. And if I walk to work, that's exercise. If I use the subway, that is exercise, because we're climbing stairs, we're rushing to a train, we're getting off a bus. All of that is exercise. It's not necessarily running a track or lifting weights, but by being active, going for walks, finding chores to do at night instead of sitting around watching TV, all that is exercise. And that really helps. Not only does it help us physically, but mentally. And if we have diabetes or a risk for diabetes, we want to make sure we keep that under check. We want to make sure if we're insulin dependent, that we take it as we're supposed to. If we have to be careful of certain things, We just make sure that we're not drinking too much soda or too much sweet juice or whatever, and try to find, healthy options to control our diabetes. And of course, by doing all of these things, it can really help lower our cholesterol and triglycerides. So many years ago, there used to be the food pyramid. And the food pyramid would tell you, here's your grains, here's your fruits, here's your proteins. And, that's kind of outdated. So now they've created this really great what's on your plate image here. So it's by choosemyplate.gov, and it's really great if you look at it. It's very simple. There's a section for fruits, vegetables, grains, protein, and dairy. You notice each one of those portions that are different colors are a different size. So that indicates maybe I'll have more vegetables than I'll have fruit, because fruits, although it's a healthy sugar, it still has a lot of sugar. So maybe I'll just have more vegetables, and then I'll have some grains, and I'll have some protein. And if that's a healthy plate. And if I'm hungry later, maybe I'll just have some more fruit and vegetables. But dairy, if you look at dairy, sometimes if we're out having breakfast and we get milk or juice, it's usually in a very small glass, and we wonder, why is it so small? Well, 6.5 to 8 ounces is usually the daily recommended amount recommendation for for orange juice and stuff like that. So don't feel cheated. They're just portion controlling the juice that we drink. Okay. So considering alcohol in our liver, we hear cirrhosis, or, from people drinking too much alcohol, and it's not always about that. There are many types of cirrhosis, like I mentioned, but one we do have to be concerned with as alcohol in our liver is how it slows down the function of our liver and how it impacts our filtration system. So when we talk about binge drinking and the different types of excessive drinking, we just want to keep some things in mind. For binge drinking, a lot of people, I say, what does that mean? And they're like, I'm drinking for 3 days in a row. Or there's many different variations, because the word binge is kind of popular now, binging on Netflix, binging on Haagen-Dazs. We tend to joke around that, but for men who binge drink, it's usually 5 or more drinks within 2 hours. Okay? For women, it's 4 or more drinks within the same amount of time. So if you're just sitting around having dinner, and dinner is 3 or 4 hours, and you're having a few glasses of wine, that's not necessarily binge drinking, because it's over a period of time, and hopefully the food you're eating is helping to absorb some of it. But if I'm just out and I'm having drinks with my friends, and we've been here an hour and a half, and I've had 3 beers and a couple of shots of whiskey, I'm pretty close to binge drinking. And what happens is that my liver the cells of my liver are being stunned by the alcohol. So my liver has to work extra hard to process each drink. It's one thing if I'm processing a beer and a shot of whiskey, but then here comes another one. So I have to allow my liver a chance to do its job. And if we're consuming alcohol rapidly, it makes the liver a little weaker, and it doesn't help process it. Of course, if I'm a woman, or if I know someone that may be pregnant, alcohol, we know the risks that are associated with alcohol and pregnancy. Underage drinking is another issue that we see a lot. So we want to make sure that hopefully we can educate young folks that if you are going to drink, try to drink safely, try not to drive, try not to do anything that will inhibit any of your decision making or anything like that, and just be careful of what you're drinking and what's happening while you're drinking. So there's a lot of different things to talk about drinking, as far as what's heavy drinking, binge drinking, and on and on and on. So, and there are many different conversations to have about it. So one of the things, this next image I like right next door to this one, it says about excessive alcohol. What's considered a drink? Someone might give me a hand gesture, this is what I drink, and it might be an average size glass. So that's great. But sometimes they don't know. So if someone's drinking a 12-ounce bottle of beer, or 8 ounces of malt liquor, or 5 ounces of wine, or an ounce and a half of this other liquor, vodka or whiskey, alcohol is alcohol is alcohol. So whether I'm drinking beer or wine, it's still alcohol. So whether I have 5 beers in 2 hours or 5 glasses of wine in 2 hours, I'm consuming 5 glasses of alcohol. So some people say, yeah, but it's not 100 proof, it's really weak. Sometimes it doesn't matter the volume of the alcohol, it's the alcohol. So if I'm drinking beer and a shot of whiskey, I'm really increasing my risk of my liver working overtime, because I got a couple of different things happen. I got all the sugar, all these grains, all this the stuff that alcohol is made of. So my liver's not able to filter it all out. So whether I'm drinking any of these things, I always try to remember alcohol is alcohol is alcohol. And to continue on, we want to talk about medications in folks that may consume alcohol. A lot of doctors will say, if you're taking this prescription, how do you take it? Make sure you don't take it with alcohol. Make sure you take it with food. Make sure you take it with water. So read your instructions on the medicine. If it says take with food, take with water, make sure you follow those instructions to the best of your ability, because you don't want to harm yourself by taking the medicine that's supposed to help you. So sometimes medicine can make us groggy. If we're new, if it's a new medication for us, we don't know what the side effects are going to be, and if we're mixing it with alcohol, we could increase the risk of adverse side effects, and also it can cause some toxic reactions to our liver, and if we're on medicine, we want it to work. If you have any type of liver disease, alcohol can just make it worse, because like your liver is already compromised from fatty liver or hepatitis. So if we're drinking alcohol on top of it, of a part of our body that's already doing, you know, extra work, it's only going to slow it down even more and cause more harm. Alcohol-related liver disease is one of the leading causes of cirrhosis, but it's not, like I said, the only cause of cirrhosis. Okay, excuse me 1 second, my screen isn't moving. Okay, so sorry about that, technical difficulties. So other risks to liver health are pretty important, because we talked about hepatitis, we talked about fatty liver, we talked about a few different things. So we also want to think about overexposure to household cleaners, bug sprays, other stuff like I mentioned earlier. Cigarette smoke is extremely harmful to the liver, especially secondhand smoke. You know, we see commercials on TV from the American Lung Association, the Cancer Society, knowing how bad cigarette smoking is, but we sometimes don't understand how dangerous it is to our liver. Or if we live with somebody that smokes, if we can get COPD or a respiratory infection from that, then chances are it's quite obvious that we're going to get other damage to our liver. Misuse of prescriptions or other over-the-counter medicine. I always encourage people, if you've never taken it before, wait before you do. Ask. If I'm talking to a friend of mine and I say, hey, Joe, you should take this vitamin because we're both guys and we both do this or that, if he takes it just on my word, it could cause an adverse reaction and it could really harm him rather than help him. So I might want to check with my doctor first and say, hey, this guy said I should take this medicine. And the doctor might know my history, or the nurse might know my history, and they'll be like, well, maybe you shouldn't. You can get those nutrients if you eat this. So vitamins are not an in place of, they're a supplement. So if I'm not eating healthy, or maybe I'm calcium deficient, or I need vitamin B because I'm a little deficient, then if the doctor tells me to take that vitamin at this dose for this amount of time, they can monitor me throughout my course of taking that, and then once I am sufficient, maybe I don't have to take that vitamin anymore. So it's not like, well, I'm going to eat pizza and junk food, but I'll just take a handful of vitamins. It's not a one or the other. It's just to supplement what we're doing. And the same thing with acetaminophen. If you look at this graphic from knowyourdose.org, it shows the many different products that have acetaminophen in it. You see gel caps, you see a drink, capsules, tablets, these little blister packs, there's a mix. So if I'm having a cold and flu medicine, it may already have acetaminophen in it. I might not want to take 2 extra caplets because then I'd be overdosing. So if I take 2 caplets of acetaminophen now at 2 o'clock and my headache is still here at 2:30, If I take 2 more, I'm overdosing. I should wait the 2 to 4 hours, like the prescription says or the instructions say, before I take too much of anything, because it may not be a fatal overdose, but it could be. So we just want to be very careful that we're not overdosing on anything that we shouldn't be. And the same thing with mixing this with our medicines, our prescriptions. A lot of times we pay very close attention to what it says on the prescription, because it's got this brown bottle, it's from the pharmacist, it has power, where in over-the-counter medicine, you don't need a prescription. So sometimes we just crack it open and take it without reading, and that can cause a lot of problems. Or if it's in a language that's not mine. If I don't speak English and everything on the counter is in English, I might not understand how to take it properly. Or if I can't read it, if the fine print is so small, I can't read it. So again, the little things that may happen. So we just always want to ask the pharmacist, should I be taking this? Talk to your doctor, just get some advice before you just take it on your own. So the other signs and symptoms of liver disease, if you start to, you want to know what they are, or you think you may have them, ask your doctor. I have yellow discoloration. My eyes, the whites of my eyes are a little yellowy. My skin's getting a little yellowish. Is it because I'm in fluorescent lighting, or how do I see? Looking at yourself in the mirror, you may not see your skin discolor or the whites of your eyes change. Somebody may point it out to you, or you may see it, but it's hard to detect on our own. That could be a sign something's going on. If my stomach is starting to swell, that could be from what they call ascites, which is ASCITES, which is fluid accumulation in the stomach, in the abdomen area, which expands my stomach. So it's like perfectly round, like a pregnancy, or like a beach ball. It's not fluid that like goes around our sides or our back. It's very focused and concentrated in one area. And that could cause pain to our other organs that we share space with our liver. If our skin is really itchy, sometimes like a lot of nighttime scratching of the legs and arms, people have extensively dry skin, that could be a sign. I mentioned earlier about the color of urine or pain or bloody or tar-like stools. If you're dehydrated, your urine may change colors throughout the day. Even if you are hydrated, your urine may change colors throughout the day based on what we're eating or how much fluid we're drinking. But if it gets to be the color of tea, soda, a dark color, that's something that you should definitely inform your medical provider of right away. Don't wait and see if it goes away. Report it, document it, and then together you'll monitor it and know what to do when that happens. We don't want to ever get dehydrated, because a lot of things can happen if we're not hydrated. So chronic fatigue, nausea, loss of appetite. Sometimes nausea and loss of appetite can kind of mimic each other. So if I'm really tired and I feel like I can't eat, I should say something. Maybe if I have some crackers or bread, that might help me feel better. Or if I can't keep anything down, I might want to make somebody aware of that. Loss of sexual drive or performance, that's usually like someone that doesn't even think about being intimate. The thought of intimacy just doesn't enter their mind, and they're just so consumed with other side effects. Sleep disturbance, or mental confusion. If I'm not sleeping well, especially if I'm itchy, if I'm going to the bathroom a lot, if I'm having a lot of these things, I'm not sleeping restfully. And that can cause some mental confusion, like a little encephalopathy, where I may have like a brain fog, where I might ask somebody, what time is it? I might say, or I might say, what day is today? Simple things like that, I may do in repetition because I'm just not thinking clearly. Sometimes it goes away, and sometimes, it doesn't. But if those are the things that I'm experiencing, any one of these or a combination, I should definitely ask for help. And that brings us to the end of our presentation on liver wellness. So what I'm going to do now is I'll encourage you to stay on, and we have a couple more minutes left. Cynthia is going to take over. But think about any questions you may have. If you have any questions about how you take care of your liver, how much is appropriate drinking, if I've cured hepatitis C, is there anything I should know? Any questions like that that may come up, please think about it and send them in, and we'll definitely answer them at the end of this. So right now, I'm going to transfer this over to Cynthia, but also this slide right here has a lot of helpful information, which you'll all be able to access again in a minute. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for your great help here with the presentation. I just wanted to include some information about the resources we have here. So let me just go to the end of the presentation. I'll just keep our contact information open while I'm talking, so just bear with me. My apologies. 1 second. Excellent. So again, my name is Cynthia. I help here and I manage the National Helpline. I'm proud to let people know that we create educational resources. We have 2 specific brochures that really speak to today's topic that Paul's been kind enough to present. We have a piece called Diet and Your Liver brochure, and the other is a liver wellness brochure. And if you're on our website, which is liverfoundation.org, as you'll see here on the top left-hand side of this screen, if you go to the web address of liverfoundation.org/downloads, you'll see our master list of all of the PDFs we have online. So you'll find both the Diet and Your Liver and the Liver Wellness brochure. And I also want to encourage all of the people that are watching the webinar, or even later on for people who are going to connect back, if you do have questions about liver disease, we have a national helpline here. The number is very easy to remember, which is 1-800-GO-LIVER or 1-800-465-4837. Our helpline staff here, we answer all kinds of questions with liver disease, from things like topics on liver disease itself, if you need help finding a physician, need help finding a local support group, or other kinds of resources, we very much encourage you to give us a call. So we're here Monday through Fridays from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And again, that's 1-800-GO-LIVER. So I do look forward to all of you connecting if you do have further questions, but we're actually going to help answer some questions now as our presentation is coming to an end. Again, I appreciate everyone's time on the webinar. We're going to switch over to Carla, and she is going to help facilitate our question and answer.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Paul. That was quite a bit of information, but we deeply appreciate your breaking it down in not only ways that are understandable, but that you offer some suggestions that are not extreme. You know, we don't, like you had said, we can start implementing better choices without feeling like we have to change everything we do within the next 3 days. And I think that's really important because it gives us all hope that regardless of where we stand now, we could move in the direction of liver health starting right after this webinar. So that's quite helpful. As Paul and Cynthia both said, please feel free to go ahead and type the questions that you may have into the GoToWebinar control panel. I already see a few coming in. While those are coming in, I'm just going to go ahead and take a quick moment to point out some of the healthcare cost savings programs that you can find either through the NeedyMeds website, which is www.needymeds.org, or by calling the NeedyMeds toll-free helpline. All of that contact information I'll go ahead and leave up on the screen, as well as the contact information for the American Liver Foundation, any other resources that they suggested would be helpful. And all of these cost savings programs you see now on your screen are, again, all ways you can save money for your medication or other healthcare costs. And many of these databases you can search by diagnosis. For example, you can look up liver disease or liver health through our diagnosis-based assistance programs, through our cancer retreats and recreational programs, our scholarships. So when you get a chance, check out the NeedyMeds website or give our expert counselors a call. And with that, as promised, I'm going to go ahead and leave all of our contact information up there. And now we're going to ask Paul and Cynthia to field some of the questions coming in. Paul, you had mentioned before, and I think this had prompted somebody to ask this question. Someone is saying, I have cured hepatitis C, which is wonderful, by the way, congratulations. are there specific things that I need to know to keep my liver healthy?
That's a great question, and congratulations of curing Hep C. I myself have cured Hep C just 3 years ago, so I completely understand the life of Hep C. So, but beyond life with Hep C, I do want to make sure that I understand that because I had liver disease, especially hepatitis C, I am at higher risk for fatty liver disease. So I have to watch my diet. I do want to think about exercising. I don't try to lift a lot of weights. I just try to do some cardio, just try to do some light training, just something to stay physically active. I keep my blood pressure up to a good level, lower my cholesterol as much as I can, and just be careful of what I'm putting into my body. I don't live in a bubble, but I just try to really think about how much of this pizza do I want, like I mentioned earlier. You know, can I maybe make one meal into 2 meals, and or eat a lot of little mini meals throughout the day so that I'm never hungry, or that my sugar doesn't drop, because if my sugar drops, I might want to gorge a little and eat like a bunch of chocolate. So I don't want to do that, because that's no good either. So I would probably think about, if I smoke, should I quit smoking? I probably would. I mean, I did, and it's helped my liver a lot. Refrain from excessive alcohol use, absolutely, because now that we have a hep-free liver, we want to have a healthy liver. So we just don't want to fall back into anything that may put our liver at jeopardy again. So, but baby steps, you do what you can handle, and always ask for help. And be careful what you Google, because you might get a lot of information that might be biased, it might be a little old, outdated, or it might be a little too personal. So think about where you get your information. You can always call us here at 1-800-GO-LIVER, and we have people that can answer those questions every day. Great question.
Thank you so much, Paul, and congratulations, and we're so happy that you have cured hepatitis C. And I think combined not only with your 20 years of experience and also what you've personally gone through, you're really able to connect with people and drive home, once again, baby steps. You know, we could, you know, everything is not going to be perfect within the next week,
Right.
but you can work towards that.
Right.
One other thing, Paul, you had mentioned it puts you, something like hepatitis C puts you at risk for fatty liver. I believe you addressed that earlier, but I do have another question coming up saying, what is fatty liver? And if you wouldn't mind just speaking to that again.
Okay, so fatty liver is the fat accumulation on the liver. So if we have high cholesterol, if we're not eating the healthiest of foods, a lot of fried foods, potato chips, fast foods, lots of soda, or lots of alcohol, anything that can create like excess weight gain or high triglycerides stuff, we want to be careful, because what happens is that the fat accumulation blocks the filtration system of the liver. So if there's something blocking the filter, whatever healthy food we are eating, we're not getting the full benefit from. Whatever medicine we're taking to help us, we're not getting the full absorption of the medicine. So the fat acts as a barrier. So we want to make sure that we try to limit the amount of fat we take. You know, they always say, oh, there's low-fat diets. Some of those things are easier said than done, but if we're at least somewhat conscious of it, we might put some of that into action as we're making those choices. Just knowing, I just want to be careful I don't get fatty liver, or if I have a child that's obese or at risk for obesity, let's try to monitor the soda and juices and snacks and make sure that they're healthy snacks. I'd rather have somebody eat an orange than drink a Tropicana or a name brand orange juice, because the healthy sugar is better than the added sugar. So it's just finding out those little simple ways of managing what we put into our body.
Thank you so much, Paul. And one of the things I wanted to stress that you had mentioned earlier, be careful what you Google. You won't be hard-pressed at all to, if you type in liver health or liver disease, you won't be hard-pressed to find information. I'm so sure you'll get tens of thousands of hits. But as Paul had said, you want to make sure that you are getting information that is accurate, up-to-date, and reliable. So we certainly recommend you going to the liverfoundation.org website, or on the Needy Meds diagnosis information pages, we have a section dedicated to liver. So check that out as well. we have a couple of other questions.
Great.
Paul and Cynthia, you had talked a little bit about this before, about being careful with supplements and making sure people really understand that supplement is in addition to, not instead of, a nutritional need. But does the Liver Foundation, this is one of the questions coming in, recommend any good or good quality over-the-counter supplements for liver in general?
The quick answer to that is no. One of the things that we do is provide you education and information. So if someone called me and said, Paul, I want to take a multivitamin, which one should I take? I'm going to say, I'm sorry, I can't tell you that, because that would be giving you medical advice or making a suggestion in your healthcare. And we don't do that. That's not our role. But what I'll say is we can give you a number of a nutritionist at a health clinic near you or at your doctor's office. If there's a nutritionist, maybe run these questions by someone there, because then they'll know you. They know your history. They know whatever health issues you have or whatever health issues you're trying to prevent, because then you'll get an expert medical opinion, where we don't provide medical opinions. We're not doctors and nurses. You know, we're educators, advocates, you know, and people that try to provide support related to different types of liver disease. So I can't tell you what vitamin to take or what specific doctor to go to, because the next question is, well, can you tell me a doctor I should go to ask these questions? And again, I'll say, well, where do you live? Oh, if you live in Omaha, Nebraska, well, let me punch in Omaha and see if we have a list of providers. And then I'll say, well, we have this list. We can give you that information or direct you to our website where that is. And then you, as the patient, would take those steps. But we may help you. Well, what kind of questions should I ask? How do I ask this question? But we won't necessarily do it for you or do the talking for you. We can't do that. We'll help you through that, though.
Thank you for clarifying that, Paul, and thank you to the audience member that asked that question, because that's a common question and one I can certainly see myself asking. And it also gave you the opportunity to stress another important point you made earlier, Paul, which is just because your friend or family member is taking a supplement that has, you know, worked wonders for them doesn't necessarily mean it's applicable to your healthcare situation. And as Paul says, the American Liver Foundation would recommend turning to your own doctor or nutritionist for that advice. I have a couple of other questions coming in. One, and I'm not familiar with the jargon, so bear with me if I'm reading this correctly. How can NAFLD be diagnosed? Am I saying, and does that, okay, let me know if I got that right. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, it's NAFLD, a non-alcohol fatty liver disease. That would be diagnosed through blood tests. Like I said, if you have high cholesterol, if you're someone that has a risk for liver disease or have gone through liver disease, they will, you know, you're monitored, you kind of stick with your medical team, and they just try to, you know, guide you throughout, you know, the duration of your treatment and even after, and just check in with them once a year or every 6 months. And, you know, if I'm someone that has gained, you know, a good size amount of weight, and I know it could hurt me in some way, then one of the things I want to make sure is that, am I at risk for fatty liver disease? Am I at risk for non-alcohol fatty liver disease? And there are blood tests in labs that are done to determine, you know, the outcome is along with my weight, you know, am I exercising, what am I eating? So there's many factors. So when someone goes to the doctor and the doctor draws blood, that it's usually just ammonia, sugar, or whatever. Everything else is a specific test. Hepatitis, specific test. Fatty liver disease, specific test. So in combination with liver enzymes and other labs, all that is determined there. If you think you're at risk for it, you know, then I would start with me. If I think I'm at risk, I'm like, why do I think I'm at risk? What am I eating? Or what aren't I eating? Am I drinking too much of this? Am I not exercising? What aren't I doing? How old am I? Do I have liver disease? Have I had it? Just ask myself some questions, do some reflecting, and then if I'm still not sure, ask the question again. Don't not ask. Always ask the question from your medical provider. Even if he says you don't have anything to worry about, say, okay, great. But you want to know that.
That's the best case scenario. But and again, another important point that's resonating certainly with me, and that's being really stressed throughout the webinar, is the American Liver Foundation focuses, the primary mission is education. And as Paul said and Cynthia has mentioned, check out their website and don't be hesitant to ask questions and turn to your doctor or healthcare provider for specific tests. One of the last questions coming in. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say that if you go and you go to our website or you do call 1-800-GO-LIVER after today and you have a question, you can just refer. You can say, I was on the Needy Meds webinar with Paul and Cynthia, and he said this, and I need clarification. They'll clarify it for you, and it's good to know that people may have additional questions after we're finished today. So if you do call us, let us know that you participated in this webinar. So that way, we know that everybody here knows we're doing this. So it's not a surprise. No one will say, what webinar are you talking about? So if you say you were part of this webinar and you still have more questions or stuff, feel free to just make sure you mention that.
Thanks for driving that home. And if some of our audience is the way I am, I'll have a million questions as soon as the webinar ends. So that's really helpful. And we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Actually, Cynthia, I'll let you repeat something that you had mentioned. We have an audience member once again asking, how did they go ahead and download the brochures that you mentioned? And I believe you said it was liverfoundation.org/download. Just go ahead and confirm that for me if you would. Thanks, Cynthia.
Sure thing. So yes, that is in fact the website, which it's liverfoundation.org/downloads with an S, plural, at the end of it. If you're having a difficult time navigating the website, you can call us on our helpline. We could email you copies. Also for individuals who may have access to the webinar and maybe don't have a computer or a printer to print it out, we'd be happy to mail you resources too. It's a big part of what we do. So definitely, if you're on the website, it's liverfoundation.org/downloads with an S at the end.
Thank you for clearing that up, and thank you to Paul and Cynthia for this robust and very important webinar, and thank you for the participants for taking time out of what is no doubt a busy workday to join us. I will mention once again, on your GoToWebinar control panel, you should have access to both of the PowerPoint presentations that accompanied today's presentation. If you have difficulty downloading them or want me to email you a copy, you can feel free to get in touch with me after the webinar. And my email address, which is not on this last slide there, is simply Carla with a C at needymeds.org. And I'll remind everyone that we will also work as quickly as we can to convert today's presentation into a video to be posted on the Needy Meds YouTube channel. And you can find that by clicking on our YouTube link on the top right-hand side of our homepage. Thank you again, Paul and Cynthia, for sharing your expertise with us and the Liver Wellness Program of the American Liver Foundation. Thanks, everybody. Have a happy and healthy rest of the week. Take care.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.